All right, shalom, shalom. All praises, honor, and glory to our power Yahweh. Bahashem Yahweh Shah, Bahashem Rachak, Wadash, double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders, a great millstone. Peace and blessings to the whole elect of the tabernacles of David, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, wherever you may be, wherever you may be. Shalom, Yahshua, shalom. Right, we're in Acts chapter 23. All right, so it says, and Paul earnestly beholding the council said, men and brethren, I have lived in all good conscience before the Most High until this day. And the high priest Ananias, and if you think about it, it's probably mentioning that, because when you think back on Paul's history before he came into the ministry, all right, he was a Pharisee and he was persecuting the church, all right, but and that made him, pretty much go hard for the Lord. So it says, I have lived in all good conscience before the Most High until this day. And the high priest Ananias commanded them that stood by him to smite him on the mouth. All right, so it's, pretty much smack him across the lips. Then said Paul unto him, the Most High shall smite thee, thou whited wall, for sittest thou to judge me after the law, and commandest me to be smitten contrary to the law. All right, Paul is basically calling him a hypocrite. All right. So as a matter of fact, let me see if I can get let's get what it says whited wall. All right. So yeah, the Jews were accustomed to whitewash the entrances to their sepulchres as a warning against defilement. Here it is, term applied to a hypocrite who conceals his malice under an outward assumption of piety. All right, and that is exactly what those wicked Pharisees were about. And I'm pretty sure wall is just wall there. Yeah. So, and if you read this in the NLT, it says, but Paul said to him, God will slap you, you corrupt hypocrite. What kind of judge are you to break the law yourself by ordering me struck like that? All right, let's see what the AMP reads. Then Paul said to him, God is going to strike you, you whitewashed wall. Do you actually sit to judge me according to the law, and yet in violation of the law order me to be struck? You see? So that's what basically Paul was saying. And this is why Yahushua went so hard on these Pharisees, man. Right? Matthew chapter 23, verse 23, it says, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have omitted the weightier matters of the law, judgment, mercy, and faith. These ought ye to have done, and not to leave the other undone. All right. So yeah, basically, the things that mattered the most is what they pushed aside. All right, for their corruptness. All right, and for their position of power and fame, and being known and seen and heard, and so on and so forth. It says, ye blind guides, which strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. Basically going back to what he just said in this scripture right here. All right. The more weightier matters of the law. All right. Judgment, mercy, and faith. Okay. These things, it says, you strain, which strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. All right. So yeah, the things that they were about, will always, I don't want to say self-willed, but I guess that's the word you could use. Okay. But the things that mattered the most is what they put aside, like we just, spoke about. All right. So these things, the way they carry themselves is like these are heavier matters, which they're not. All right. These are the more simple things. All right. That are, you're supposed to be following as according to the law, as pushers of the law. All right. Because they were the Pharisees. Right. But they weren't doing these things. It says, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye may clean the outside of the cup and of the platter, but within they are full of extortion and excess. You see? It says, thou blind Pharisee, cleanse first that which is within the cup and platter, that the outside of them may be clean also. And this also goes into, where you often hear about, being a Jew inwardly and not outwardly, because this is what those Pharisees were about, being Jews outwardly. It's all about being seen in a certain way, heard in a certain way, being praised and glorified and, feared and respected in a certain way. But on the inside, all right, they were filthy. Okay. So this is that little, parable here. All right. Cleanse the inside of the cup, meaning change your inward man first, and then the outward man will, I don't want to say appear perfect, but the outward man will will equal out to what I'm trying to figure out how I want to say it. But basically, the way that they were showing themselves to be weren't really who they were on the inside. So if you change the way that you are on the outside, then your outward person is going to automatically show. But you're really not that outwardly person. All right, there's a different person on the inside. So it says, thou blind Pharisee, cleanse first that which is within the cup and platter, that the outside of them may be clean also. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye are like unto whited sepulchres, all right? Similar to what we just read there, what Paul said, like a whited wall, right? It says, ye are like unto whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones and of all uncleanness. So he's likening them, their actions, or their way that they carry themselves, to another, to this sepulcher, right? It says, even so, ye also outwardly appear righteous unto men, right? Summing up everything we just said. You appear righteous unto men outwardly, but within ye are full of hypocrisy and iniquity. And what's iniquity? All right. The condition of without law. You see? Because ignorant of it, which they most definitely weren't ignorant of the law. They knew the law, but because of violating it. Then it says contempt and violation of law, iniquity, wickedness, which is pretty much going to what? Sin and hypocrisy. All right. The acting of a stage player, dissimulation, hypocrisy. All right. So they were just playing the part of righteous men, and they actually weren't. All right. So we don't need that. Well, to simulate, feign, pretend. There you go. To impersonate anyone, play a part. All right. So an actor, in other words. All right. So let's go back to Acts 23 and verse 4. It says, and they that stood by said, revilest thou the Most High's high priest? Then said Paul, I wish not, brethren, that he was the high priest, for it is written, thou shalt not speak evil of the ruler of thy people. All right. And I really want to, if I had split screen, I would go, I'm going to jump back and forth here. All right. So, just to break it down even further, what's been said here. So it says, those standing near Paul said to him, do you dare insult the Most High's high priest? I'm sorry, brothers, I didn't realize he was the high priest, Paul replied. For the scriptures say, you must not speak evil of any of your rulers. And we'll see what the AMP says, I guess. I was only intending to get the NLT. So verse 4 and 5 says, but those who stood near Paul said, are you insulting the high priest of the Most High? Paul said, I was not aware, brothers, that he was high priest. For it is written, you should not speak evil of a ruler of your people. All right. And we can actually pull Ecclesiastes 10 and 20. It says, curse not the king, no, not in thy thought, and curse not the rich in thy bedchamber. For a bird of the air shall carry the voice, and that which hath wings shall tell the matter. All right, which is very beautiful, very important scripture, because this is something we often talk about, especially us being in these wicked, rundown, vile bodies. All right, and demons running around. Okay, we got to be aware. All right, when demons are trying to infiltrate your thoughts, you got to rebuke those demons, because if you don't, and you just keep carrying along, the thought that demon is trying to assert in your mind is going to come your own. So if you're speaking ill of, say someone, above you or whatever, all right, you're taking on that thought yourself. All right. And you may be judged accordingly. But if it comes along, you got to know it's a demon, and you rebuke the demon and you keep moving. All right. So, and I said it before, rebuking demons is a 24-hour job, man, because, hey, we ain't free of these bodies yet, man. So we're supposed to be in constant prayer and constant rebuke of demons, man, because they're coming heavier and heavier the more we move, towards the end. All right, we're going to get one more. Exodus 22 and 28, it says, thou shalt not revile the gods nor curse the ruler of thy people, which is what Paul quoted there from the law. All right. So going back, verse 6 says, but when Paul perceived that the one part were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, he cried out in the council, right, men and brethren, I am a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee, of the hope and resurrection of the dead, I am called in question. Right now, this council consisted of obviously the Pharisees and the Sadducees, right? The Sanhedrin is what they were called. All right, the Sanhedrin, the great council at Jerusalem, consisting of the 71 members scribes, elders, prominent members of the high priestly families, and the high priest, which obviously the high priestly families are talking about the Levites. Those were the priests. It says the most important causes were brought before this tribunal, inasmuch as the Roman rulers of Judea had left to it the power of trying such cases, which is what, we're getting a lot of that in the latter books of the book of Acts, right? Okay. Even dating back to like a few chapters, okay? Like when Paul was still out on those journeys, all right, in these other cities, they would have matters, according to our law. And then if it was, a very, a heavier, more serious matter, it would have to be taken up to the Romans, all right? But that's only if what was going on pretty much contended with that Roman law. If it had nothing to do with the Roman law, it would, like they said, back when I believe when he was in the Ephesians, in Ephesus, right? Hey, this is according to you guys' law, right? You're going to have to deal with that. So it says, inasmuch as the Roman rulers of Judea had left to it the power of trying such cases and also of pronouncing sentence of death, with the limitation that a capital sentence pronounced by the Sanhedrin was not valid unless it was confirmed by the Roman procurator. You see, there you go. And then it also says a smaller tribunal or council, which every Jewish town had for the decision of less important cases. And that's actually what happened in certain, like in Yahushua. Like Yahushua, he started out somewhere, then he went up higher, and then he also went up even higher, right? Which, him dealing with Pilate and so on and so forth, right? So just like you have today, man, you go in there and you got a court case, and if it's serious enough, they're going to bump you up from, regular court to a Supreme Court or whatever. And if it's really that serious of a case, you're going to end up in federal court. All right. It's no different from today. And so when you separate, we'll grab the Pharisees first, because those Sadducees, oh boy. So the Pharisees, all right. So if you don't understand these two different sects, these parties here. So it says a sect. This is the Pharisees. It says a sect that seems to have started after the Jewish exile. In addition to Old Testament books, the Pharisees recognized in oral tradition a standard of belief and life. They sought for distinction and praise by outward observance of external rites and by outward forms of piety, and such as, like we just read, right? As such as ceremonial washings, fastings, prayers, and almsgiving, which are all things according to our customs and things that, we were holding highly to. All right, but they were what? They were actors, it says, and comparatively negligent of genuine piety. You see, like the whited sepulchres, or it said what we just read, cleaning the inside of the cup and the platters, right, that the outside may appear clean and so on and so forth, right? Negligent of genuine piety. They provided themselves on their fancied good works. There you go, you see? And that's why they came against Yahushua, because they knew the law so well. And that's, can't take that away from them. They definitely knew the law and the prophecies. But when the Messiah came along, they rejected him for who he was. And furthermore, given their position and that loftiness that they were in because of that position, it was like, you know what? We're gonna just chop this dude down. All right, he's tripping. All right, we have Abraham. So I'm like, oh, for Abraham was I am, and they started tripping out when the Lord said that. And many other cases, man. Okay, so constantly trying to find fault in him. What happened? It shows how wicked Jake was back then. Because if it was serious enough, well, and can't even call it serious enough from their eyes. If it was serious enough, what happens every time they're trying to put someone to death, right? So it says they held strenuously to a belief in the existence of good and evil angels. All right, which is correct because the scriptures speak of that, and to the expectation of a Messiah, also true. But they just didn't accept the Messiah when he came. They didn't accept Yahushua. All right, that was Joseph's boy. All right, the carpenter's son. We knew him. He's from this rinky-dink town. What are you talking about? I ain't no Messiah. And they cherished the hope that the dead, after a preliminary experience either of reward or of penalty in Hades, which is hell, but the true hell is only the grave, right? So anyways, it says would be recalled to life by him. So, and that's what pretty much going into the grave, right? Let me read it again. It says, after a preliminary experience either of reward or of penalty in Hades, would be recalled to life by him and be requited each according to his individual deeds. Now, that's somewhat right, but it's really off if you really read it slower, all right? Because it makes it sound like how some people believe in the what's that term that word they use, purgatory or something like that. Like you're going, like the Christians today believe you're going to die and then you're going to get judged and you're either going to go to heaven or you're going to go to hell. No, if you were wicked, All right. You're going to be reincarnated probably as a wicked to get judged later. Because ultimately, there's only two judgments. You get salvation on the chariot, or you receive death. All right. So it says here, yep, it says in opposition to the usurped dominion of the Herods and the rule of the Romans, they stoutly upheld the theocracy in their country's cause and possessed great influence with the common people. According to Josephus, they numbered more than 6,000. They were bitter enemies of Yahushua and his cause. We know that because we read the history, went through the whole book of John. All right, reading about the history, which is, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, but you get the point. And yeah, constantly, they kept coming against them to the point where they brought liars against them and, plotted to kill him, right? So it says, and were in turn severely rebuked by him for their avarice, all right, which we just read in Matthew 23. That was I believe that was Yahushua speaking, okay, to those wicked Pharisees, right? It says severely rebuked by him for their avarice, ambition, hollow reliance on outward works, and affection of piety in order to gain popularity. And there you go. That's everything we just read. We didn't read the whole thing, but we read the portion that we wanted to get, especially according to what Paul had just mentioned there. Now, dealing with these guys, oh boy, the Sadducees, all right? Check these guys out. Straight tripping. So, says Sadducees, a religious party. Now, you notice there how there's less written about them, but there's a lot more to go into. So it says a religious party at the time of the Messiah among the Jews who denied that the oral law was a revelation of the Most High to the Israelites. Wait a minute. But I thought the scriptures say, lo, I come in the volume of the book, it is written of me, which is Yahushua. So it says they deny that the oral law was a revelation of the Most High to the Israelites, which came through us to us by Moses, right? And who deemed the written law alone to be obligatory on the nation, pretty much forced on us unnecessarily, right? It says, as the divine authority, they deny the following doctrines: resurrection of the body. And then when you go to 1 Corinthians 15, Paul wrote this to the church at Corinth. If you don't believe in the resurrection, then everything that you believe in is vain. So they were pretty much a bunch of vain individuals. No, they didn't believe in the resurrection of the body. All right. So it says immortality of the soul. Wait a minute. But what about the blessings of the kingdom of heaven? Okay. You can find immortality all over. Okay. Even in the Apocrypha, though we be punished in the sight of men, our hope is in immortality. All right. A lot of the prophets of old spoke about the immortality. So what are they talking about? Which you can also go right back to what we just talked about. The letter to the church to Corinth, 1 Corinthians 15, immortality of the soul. Paul spoke about those things there. Okay. In that letter. Existence of spirits and angels. Like, come on, man. There's a right-hand side and there's a left-hand side. All right. It even spoke about who was it? Michael disputing over the body of Moses with Satan. And he didn't bring up a railing accusation against Satan. All right. But what he did say is the Most High rebuke you. So then it says divine predestination, all out of order. All right. All out of order. But they did affirm free will. But there's no such thing as free will. They affirmed free will, but didn't believe in divine predestination. When clearly the scriptures say that man's goings are of the Lord, how then can a man understand his own way? And as we always quote Isaiah 46:10, declaring the end from the beginning, saying that my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. Well, that doesn't sound like free will. Okay. Job 30. 30, I believe it is. No, 33. All right. At night, the Lord seals your instructions in your sleep. That doesn't sound like free will, man. Okay. So, and now you understand why, we'll say certain Israelites, all right, today are reincarnated and they have this YOLO spirit on them. You only live once. I'm living my best life. I ain't got time for time. You understand where that spirit comes from. All right. They were probably part of the Sadducees or part of the followers of the Sadducees. All right. Because everything is reincarnated, man. People, places, events, things of that nature. All right. There's nothing new under the sun, like the scriptures tell us in Ecclesiastes. So covering them and having a general idea, in case you weren't familiar with them before, these two parties here, you have a more general idea. So it says, but when Paul perceived that the one part were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, he cried out in the council. All right, meaning the Sanhedrin, which are both of these parties. Men and brethren, I am a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee, of the hope and resurrection of the dead, I am called in question. I believe Paul was a Benjamite. I believe his father also had Roman citizenship, because Paul does mention being freeborn and so on and so forth, and him having a Roman citizenship. So verse 7 here says, and when he had said, there arose a dissension between the Pharisees and Sadducees, and the multitude was divided. Yeah, they had, disagreements there. Let's get the word dissension. Stasis. There you go. Insurrection, strife. Okay. They argue one with another about the matters. All right. So we really need that. There's a lot more there than I thought it was going to be. All right. So it says, and when he had so said, there arose a dissension between the Pharisees and Sadducees, and the multitude was divided. All right, because the Sadducees, given what was, that's why it was important that we read into the backgrounds there. The Sadducees will immediately be against Paul, but the Pharisees were like, wait a minute, he's speaking like one of us, and he just said he was a Pharisee. So check this out. So it says, for the Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, as we just read, neither angel nor spirit, but the Pharisees confess both. All right. So now it's leaning towards more. Now the Pharisees are like, maybe this guy's not too off. Let's keep reading here. So verse 9 says, and there arose a great cry, and the scribes that were of the Pharisees part arose and strove, saying, we find no evil in this man. All right. But if a spirit or an angel has spoken to him, let us not fight against the Most High. Yeah. So them believing, all right, in those things, basically opposite of what the Sadducees believe in. They believe in all those things. So they were like, wait a minute, maybe this guy's not so bad after all. He's a Pharisee. He's talking like one of us. So he believes in this, that, the third thing, like we believe in. So maybe a spirit or an angel talked to him. All right. So let's not be so hasty in this matter. Hold on a second. All right. It says, we find no evil in this man, but if a spirit or an angel has spoken to him, let us not fight against the Most High. Which is probably the most, and I'm just speaking as a man, giving my opinion. This is probably the wisest thing you would hear coming out of the Pharisees. When, if you go into Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, whichever chapters or whichever books you go into, this is probably the wisest thing you would ever hear any of the Pharisees say. Now, unless you're talking about, one that was not wicked, all right? But there's not much there. Because I think you had, what was his name? I forget his name. But he brought, incense and ointments or something like that for Yahushua's burial. He was a secret follower of Yahushua. He was a Pharisee, but he wasn't one of the wicked ones. He secretly believed in Yahushua because they weren't all wicked. Okay. But anyways, this line here, it says, let us not fight against them. It says, we find no evil in this man, but if a spirit or an angel has spoken to him, let us not fight against the Most High power. All right. It's probably the most wisest thing you hear the Pharisees say in the scriptures. It says, verse 10 says, and when there arose a great dissension, the chief captain, fearing lest Paul should have been pulled in pieces of them, commanded the soldiers to go down, because they were probably fighting over him. The Sadducees probably want to get him, and they're going to move on with persecution. The Pharisees were like, hold up, this man ain't so off after all. All right. So they, tug of war over Paul's body. Right. So it says, commanded the soldiers to go down and to take him by force from among them and to bring him into the castle. And the night following, the Lord stood by him and said, be of good cheer, Paul, for as thou hast testified of me in Jerusalem, so must thou bear witness also at Rome. So the Lord came to his side, man. Yahushua was there with him, all right? And he didn't foretell of any death coming up next, all right? He says, let's read it again. Because if you go, let me get this. You get the red letter, all right? This was Yahushua. It says, be of good cheer, Paul, for as thou hast testified of me in Jerusalem, so must thou bear witness also at Rome. So the Lord was telling them, hey, don't even get sad. Don't worry about it. All right. You got more to go. All right. So it says, a conspiracy to kill Paul. Right. So it says, and when it was day, certain of the Jews banded together and bound themselves under a curse, saying that they would neither eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. So they basically took an oath, because we can get the word curse here. It wasn't a wicked oath, but, the point remains. Right. Yeah. To devote to destruction. It says to declare one's self liable to the severest divine penalties. So this is the oath that they took. Like, all right, whatever the case may be, we're gonna get this dude. All right, yeah, curse. We can read all of those, but not everyone. So yeah, pretty much going into they made an oath one with another. All right, saying this is the oath that we would neither eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. All right, and they're really kind of bugging out because honestly, well, I guess not, because in their minds they were thinking, next 24 to 48 hours we about to get this dude. All right, but little do they know, all right, it wasn't going down like that. And I guarantee you, we can't say for sure because it's not in the scripture, but I guarantee you that oath was broken because they never got Paul. All right. Because Yahushua just told Paul, that verse 11, all right, it's very important. Yahushua just told Paul, hey, you got more to go. You got more to talk about, all right? You got more things to see. You're not about to be put to death, okay? Be of good cheer. So the fact that they didn't get Paul, as we read on, we know for a fact these guys broke that oath and started eating again, all right? Because ain't no way they just carried on without eating, because that means they'll just die, which would be stupid. All right. But at the same time, they were wicked. So they had to break the oath. Okay. You know, they started eating again. All right. But that's some off camera stuff, like in a movie or something like that. You get things that happen off camera, like, wait, when I saw this character last, they were this, that, and the third thing. Now they come back and I don't know, they're a super warrior and stuff. But that happened off camera. You don't get to see how that person built from a scared nerd or something like that into a warrior. All right. It happened off camera. But anyways, yeah, they broke that oath, man, because they didn't get Paul. Well, let's keep reading. We'll get down to it. So it says, and they were more than 40 which had made this conspiracy. Yeah, they came together with that oath, that curse, that oath that they made, swearing together, a conspiracy, right? With the word conspire, meaning with spire, going back to mean spirit or breath, right? With one consent, they took this wicked oath, man, this curse. It says, and they came to the chief priests and elders and said, we have bound ourselves under a great curse. Yeah, bound ourselves. And that's the oath. See, same thing there. All right, same words we just read. All right, and the curse is the same thing we just read. All right, anathema. All right, same thing. All right, so we have bound. Look, it says they came to the chief priests and the elders and said, we have bound ourselves under a great curse, that we will eat nothing until we have slain Paul. Now, therefore, ye with the council signify to the chief captain that he bring him down unto you tomorrow, as though ye would inquire something more perfectly concerning him. All right, yeah, as if they wanted to get more information on the case and the matter, right? And we, or ever he come near, are ready to kill him. All right, so let me read this in NLT in case anyone was up to speed on that. So, what verse were we, like 12, 13? Yep. So it says, the next morning, a group of Jews got together and bound themselves with an oath, you see, not to eat or drink until they had killed Paul. There were more than 40 of them in the conspiracy, all right? Now, we don't know how many it was, but it was no less than 40. 40 plus. It was more than 40. Could have been 41, 45, could have been 65, but it was no less than 40. We know that much. There were more than 40 of them in the conspiracy. They went to the leading priests and elders and told them, we have bound ourselves with an oath to eat nothing until we have killed Paul. So you and the high council should ask the commander to bring Paul back to the council again. Pretend you want to examine his cause more fully. We will kill him on the way. So what you guys will do, all right, we made this oath, we're going to kill this dude. And what y'all need to do is get the chief captain to bring him back, because y'all want to question him, right? And so when he's on the way back, we're going to kill him in the way. All right, before he gets here, we're going to just take him out. All right, we're going to spring a trap on him. It says, but Paul's nephew, his sister's son, heard of their plan and went to the fortress and told Paul. All right. So before we go on, because it says, pretend you want to examine him, his case, or fully, we will kill him. All right. Now, when you go back to, all right. So when you go back to, let's just pull it up. Numbers 35, right? Numbers 35 and 30, it says, whoso killeth any person, the murderer shall be put to death by the mouth of witnesses. Now, this is not Paul's case, because Paul is not a murderer. Excuse me, but I'm just reading this as part of the law, dealing with, killing and murdering and things of that nature, right? By the mouth of witnesses. But one witness shall not testify against any person to cause them to die. And so these wicked Israelites, these wicked Jews, went to the council, right? All right, which is obviously more than one witness. Which, I'm not, like I said, this wasn't Paul's case. But let's keep reading. It says, moreover, ye shall take no satisfaction for the life of a murderer, which is guilty of death, but he shall be surely put to death. And ye shall take no satisfaction for him that is fled to the city of his refuge, that he should come again to dwell in the land until the death of the high priest, of the priest. So ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood it defileth the land, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. And they were pretty much about to violate everything we just read here. They were going to put Paul to death, without a cause, all right, and put blood on their own hands. So, and I also want to back up and get one more. Here we go. Exodus chapter 21. All right. And verse 14 says, but if a man come presumptuously upon his neighbor to slay him with guile, thou shalt take him from mine altar that he may die. Now that's more in line with what we're reading here in the book of Acts, because Paul has not committed any type of murder, but they want to put him to death. So they're the ones who will be in violation of the law. Okay. And this shows you how wicked not only they were, but the council was. All right. This whole wicked ass council. Now, of course, once again, not all the Pharisees were wicked. I don't really know about the Sadducees, but we know not all the Pharisees were wicked. But we see the wicked portion of them, just how wicked they were, man. So, and this is just Paul. So it should bring you no surprise when you're dealing with Yahushua. All right. That's the Lord and Savior. So if they did that to him, what more man like Paul, or anybody for that matter? Stephen was a martyr, right? You got James, okay? They try to get Peter, so on and so forth, all right? So yeah, beautiful. But if a man come presumptuously upon his neighbor to slay him with guile, thou shalt take him from mine altar that he may die. And that's exactly what they were about to do, try to put this man to death for no reason. All right, so verse 15 says, now therefore ye with the council signify to the chief captain that he bring him down unto you tomorrow, as though ye would inquire something more perfectly concerning him, and we, or ever he come near, or ready to kill him. Right before he gets there, we're going to kill him in the way. Right, verse 16 says, and when Paul's sister's son, basically his nephew, heard of their lying in wait, he went and entered into the castle and told Paul. Then Paul called one of the centurions unto him and said, bring this young man unto the chief captain, for he hath a certain thing to tell him. So he took him and brought him to the chief captain and said, Paul, the prisoner, called me unto him and prayed me to bring this young man unto thee, who hath something to say unto thee. Then the chief captain took him by the hand and went with him aside privately and asked him, what is that thou hadst to tell me? And he said, the Jews have agreed to desire thee that thou wouldest bring down Paul tomorrow into the council, as though they would inquire somewhat of him more perfectly. But do not thou yield unto them, for there lie in wait for him of them more than 40 men, which have bound themselves with an oath that they would neither eat nor drink till they have killed him. And now are they ready, looking for a promise from thee. All right. So just in case you didn't, run up the speed on that, let's get the NLT, simplify a little bit more for you. All right. So it says the commander took his hand, led him aside and asked, what is it you want to tell me? Paul's nephew told him, some Jews are going to ask you to bring Paul before the high council tomorrow, pretending they want to get some more information. But don't do it. There are more than 40 men hiding along the way, ready to ambush him. They have vowed not to eat or drink anything until they have killed him. They are ready now, just waiting for your consent. Basically waiting for you to fall into the trap of sending Paul to the council so they can get Paul. Don't let anyone know you told me this, the commander warned the young man. All right. So going back down to, he says, so the chief captain then let the young man depart and charged him, right? Basically, he gave him a command, right? Charged him, see thou tell no man that thou hast showed these things to me. And this is what the chief captain does. All right. See, remind you now, those are those Israelites that are trying to spring this trap, even the council, right? But these are Roman soldiers here, and they understand that Paul is a Roman citizen. All right. So keep that in mind. So it says Paul moved to Caesarea. Acts 23:23 says, and he called unto him 2 centurions, saying, make ready 200 soldiers to go to Caesarea, and horsemen 70, which is 70. A score is 20. So 3 scores would be 60, and plus 10 is 70. All right, 70 horsemen, 200 soldiers, 70 horsemen, and 200 spearmen. All right, and spearmen 200, and the third hour of the night. At the third hour of the night, which is 9 o'clock p.m. All right, 9 o'clock at night, and provide them beasts that they may set Paul on and bring him safe unto Felix the governor. So either horse, donkey, whatever, they're going to put him on, right? And he wrote a letter after this manner. Here's the letter. Claudius Lysias, unto the most excellent governor, Felix sendeth greeting. And I don't know why Felix is lit up, but let's get these names. So Felix, right? So it says, a Roman procurator of Judea, appointed by the Emperor Claudius in AD 53. If I'm correct, was it Claudius that reigned up to 54? So this is the year before the last reign of Claudius, all right? It says he ruled the province in a mean, cruel, and profligate manner, pretty much, reckless manner. His period of office was full of troubles and seditions. Paul was brought before Felix at Caesarea. He was remanded in prison and kept there 2 years in hopes of extorting money from him. All right. And they put that in Acts 24:26, which is the next chapter. All right. He hoped also that money should have been given him of Paul, that he might loose him. Wherefore he sent for him the oftener, and commune with him. All right. Often. But after 2 years, Porcius Festus came into Felix's room, and Felix, willing to shew the Jews a pleasure, left Paul bound. Right, so you see how wicked, Anyways, let's keep going. It says, at the end of that time, Porcius Festus was appointed to supersede Felix, who, on his return to Rome, was accused by the Jews in Caesarea, and would have suffered the penalty due to his atrocities had not his brother Pallas prevailed with the Emperor Nero to spare him. All right, yeah, because Nero, yep, Julius, Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, yep, and Nero, all right, yeah, Julius, Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, yep, Nero, because I believe Nero came after Claudius, all right, so from 54, I believe 54 is where Claudius's reign ended, and then Nero picked up, all right, so it falls right in line. So it says, Pallas prevailed with the Emperor Nero to spare him. The wife of Felix was Drusilla, daughter of Herod Agrippa I, who was his third wife, and whom he persuaded to leave her husband and marry him. All right. So Claudius Lysias, let's get Lysias. A tribune or chiliarch of the Roman cohort. Not much there. So what Claudius says. Okay, so Claudius Lysias, a tribune of the Roman cohort who rescued Paul from the hands of the mob at Jerusalem. There you go. Because the other Claudius is the Emperor Claudius, all right, which we just mentioned right there. You see it, 54. 41 to 54 was his reign. Yep, see? Right there, right on line. Boom. So going back, so it says, Claudius Lysias, unto the most excellent governor, Felix, sendeth greeting. All right, verse 27 says, this man was taken of the Jews and should have been killed of them. Then came I with an army and rescued him, having understood that he was what? A Roman, meaning he was a Roman citizen, not that Paul was a freaking Edomite. All right. He wasn't a heathen. He was an Israelite with Roman citizenship. Perfect example. Well, I'll just use myself. I'm an Israelite and I have American citizenship because I grew up here. All right. So, so if I was across seas, I'd be able to enter to, an embassy or something like that. All right. Somewhere where, you get the point. All right. Having understood that he was a Roman, meaning he had Roman citizenship. All right. Verse 28 says, and when I would have known the cause wherefore they accused him, I brought him forth into their council, whom I perceived to be accused of questions of their law, but to have nothing laid to his charge worthy of death or of bonds. And when it was told me how that the Jews lay wait for the man, I sent straightway to thee, and gave commandment to his accusers also to say before thee what they had against him. Farewell. So let's go and get this letter. I guess we'll read both versions there, so you can understand this letter here. All right. So here it is, verse 25. And after instructing the centurions, he wrote a letter to this effect: Claudius Lysias, to the most excellent Governor Felix, greetings. This man was seized as a prisoner, by the Jews and was about to be killed by them. When I came upon him with the troops and rescued him, having learned that he was a Roman citizen, and wanting to know the exact charge which they were making against him, I brought him down to their council, Sanhedrin, the Jewish high court, right? And I discovered that he was accused in regard to questions and issues in their law, but he was under no accusation that will call for the penalty of death or even for imprisonment. Now, remember, in the last session, we talked about the Valerian and the, how do you pronounce it? Porcian law, all right? So, just in general, anyways, not even to speak on those things, but in general, all right, you could not flog or have penalty of death or even crucify a Roman citizen. Certain things were against Roman citizens, all right, and so these Jews is in from the letter aspect, these Jews are seeking to put this man to death, all right, for no reason, and this man is a Roman citizen, all right. So that's pretty much the gist of that. So it says, when I was told that there would be a plot against the man, I sent him to you immediately, also directing his accusers to bring their charges against him before you. All right, we'll get the NLT. That was the AMP, one of my more favorite versions to read. So it says, you just get verse 27, says, this man was seized by some Jews, and they were about to kill him when I arrived with the troops. When I learned that he was a Roman citizen, I removed him to safety. Then I took him to their high council to try to learn the basis of the accusations against him. I soon discovered the charge was something regarding their religious law. Certainly nothing worthy of imprisonment or death, you see. But when I was informed of a plot to kill him, I immediately sent him on to you. I have told his accusers to bring their charges before you. And really, they didn't have a charge against Paul, but you get the point, though. But he says, I have told his accusers to bring their charges before you. It was all really, at this moment, it's pretty much more so sparing Paul's life, all right? Which goes back up why I told you verse 11 was so important when Yahushua came beside Paul, right? And told him you're going to have to testify again, all right? In Rome, just like you did in Jerusalem. So verse 31 says, so that night, as ordered, the soldiers took Paul as far as Antipatris, all right? Or Antipatris, however you want to pronounce it. I'm not really sure. Let's go back over here to the KJV. Here it is. Antipatris.
Strong's G 494. Antipatris. Antipatris.
Antipatris is what he said there. That's a root word. Let me see what it says here. Antipas, going back to Antipas. All right. A Christian of Pergamos who suffered martyrdom. Yep, that's in Revelation. Antipas, my faithful martyr. But we're going to this place here. I believe it's a place. Yep. A place in Palestine. All right. A city situated between Joppa and Caesarea in a very fertile region not far from the coast, rebuilt by Herod the Great and named Antipatris in honor of his father Antipater. Yeah, so we know Herod the Great, that was the one that was in power around the time that Yahushua was born. All right, so before, because you have BCE and then AD. So this guy was around in BCE, all right? Up to the point of because the calendar is pretty much around Yahushua's birth, right? So yeah, up until that point. And then I guess you could say a little afterwards, because if I'm correct, that was the same one who said, put all the male children to death that were 2 years or under, because he was trying to find Yahweh, trying to put them to death. Because they understood the prophecies too, going back because of the history of why they understood the prophecies, right? That conversion. And then Antipater, all right, which you often, it's not often you just see the name Antipater. A lot of times you'll see Antipater the Idumean, because these were Edomites. And just like today, you have some Israelites that look like Edomites, but they're actually Israelites by way of their bloodline. But you also have Edomites who may be dark skinned, look just like a so-called Negro maybe, all right? But it's actually an Edomite. And these how some of these Herods were. And Antipater was the Idumean, which Idumea is the Greek way of saying Edom. So these were Edomites, or so-called white people, all right? So that's just a little, some Snapple fact history on that. So it says, then the soldiers, as it was commanded them, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris. On the morrow, they left the horsemen to go with him and returned to the castle, who, when they came to Caesarea and delivered the epistle to the governor, presented Paul also before him, right? Basically the letter we just read, right? And when the governor had read the letter, he asked of what province he was. And when he understood that he was of Cilicia, remember Paul went to talk about Cilicia before. I'm not from some rinky-dink town. I'm from a very known city, and I have Roman citizenship, right? So it says, and when he understood that he was of Cilicia, I will hear thee, said he, when thine accusers are also come. All right, basically, okay, we'll bring this to court. And he commanded him to be kept in Herod's judgment hall. All right, and let's see what judgment hall goes into. Praetorian, headquarters in a Roman camp, the tent of the commander-in-chief, the palace in which the governor or procurator of a province resided, to which use the Romans were accustomed to appropriate the palaces, already exist. I believe we're going into this somewhere else, but slightly different though. But anyways, it says, and formerly dwelt in by kings or princes. At Jerusalem, it was a magnificent palace which Herod the Great had built for himself. There he is again, and which the Roman procurators seem to have occupied whenever they came from Caesarea to Jerusalem to transact public business. The camp of the Praetorian soldiers established by Tiberius. So they give you a few things there. All right. But that was the end of Acts chapter 23, as we see what's happening, surrounding, Paul in this case here, and so on and so forth. All right. So it's not over yet. And Yahushua assured him that up there in verse 11. Let's get that verse 11 and close out on that. So it says, in the night following, the Lord stood by him and said, be of good cheer, Paul, for as thou hast testified of me in Jerusalem, so must thou bear witness also at Rome. All right. So Lord will, you edify to next time. Yahshua, I'm going to say shalom.